Hey, this is Maya, and you're listening to The Brad Gilmore Show.
Oh, Brad, what have you done now?
We only got one life to the sun. You worked all day, got a little bit done. That's okay, now the night begins. As long as we don't go home tonight, never ends. So, we way past go. Collect 2 double O, now let's head to the show. See your favorite band with a drink in the hand. The way you look at me, it's clear I'm the man. But this ain't about me.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the one and the only, the Brad Gilmore Show. Oi, tu merda. We got a great show for you today. We have a very I'm excited about this show. All right? I'm excited about this show. Sorry if I sound slightly congested or a little nasally, because I am. I've been jumping time zones in different climates the last couple of days. Went out to Las Vegas, Nevada, with the man Booker T and the Queen Charmel. We went out there for the One Step Closer Foundation's poker event, their annual poker tournament, or their biannual poker tournament. We talked to my man Jacob out there. Shout out to Jacob and the One Step Closer Foundation. Kicked it at Nerd. We had actually a great time. There's a bar off Fremont Street in Las Vegas, Nevada called Nerd, right? The Nerd. And they have actually a comic book and memorabilia shop next door called Nerdgasm. The Nerd's sweet, man. And we kicked it there. Myself, Booker T, Jacob, the Queen Charmel, Jonathan, my man Jonathan over there, Johnny, who is the toy expert on Pawn Stars. We kicked it and talked it for a little bit. Rob Van Dam was over there, and Rob and I got to chat. We always like to chat mafia stuff. Rob just moved out to Las Vegas, and he and I were talking about mob stuff, mafia stuff. Actually, I have a clip that I might throw in here. Maybe not today, but maybe later in the week. I'm going to do another show. And I'm going to throw in, Rob and I had this mob talk one time that Telly from Title Match Wrestling caught on camera. So I might put that on the show. I don't think I've ever released it. So I might drop that. But RVD and I, we sat and talked about Donnie Brasco, amongst other things, and Sam Giancana and the history of Las Vegas. And we watched the UFC fights, which were awesome. Brian Ortega, Max Holloway, Jay Czech, and Shevchenko was great. There are a lot of good fights. That Gunnar Nelson fight versus Brazilian Cowboy, Alex Oliveira. Ooh, man, did he ever bust him up. But that's going to be for later in the week when Booker and I get together on heated conversations on Sports Radio 610. But today on the show, I have a really great guest. I have Kevin from Defunctland. Kevin wrote the book that I'm holding in my hand right now, Defunctland, A Guide to the Magic Kingdom. Now, if y'all don't know the channel, if you've never heard of the channel, what it is, it's really cool. Kevin goes in there and he discusses defunct theme park attractions and theme parks from around the world. And he gives you a deep dive about the history of them, all kinds of interesting facts. So I stumbled across the channel, I think, trying to find Back to the Future, the ride stuff. And I found this channel, and I just kind of went on a crazy binge. I just kept watching video after video after video, and his research is second to none. I mean, this man really knows what he's doing in terms of research, in terms of how to lay out a documentary, how to make it compelling, how to make it interesting. And so he did one about Astroworld that I loved. He did one about Disney's America. We talk about both of those on here. But he wrote a book called The Guide to the Magic Kingdom. Talks about all the Disney attractions, what you need to know, maybe what you could skip, maybe what you could spend a little more time in line to see. A lot of really good stuff here. He and I get into it a little bit about Pirates of the Caribbean. He also had Zack Ryder on his show, WWE superstar Zack Ryder. And he and I talk about what is the crossover for pro wrestling fans and theme park enthusiasts, because there is a crossover. We try to dissect that too, and we talk about Disney's America, which is one of the craziest parks I've ever heard of. And I had no idea that there was a Disney theme park that was almost made in the early 1990s about the history of America. But it sounds okay in theory until you jump into all the logistics of that. Kevin and I talk about all of that and more on the show. But before I get to that interview with Kevin from Defunctland, I got to shout out to Matt and all the people over there at Rode Microphones. Rode Microphones, when I got home from Las Vegas, there was a shiny package at my front door that said Rode Microphones on it. I opened it up, and right now I'm using what they gave me. This is called the Rodecaster Pro. And this thing is awesome. It's an all-in-one podcast studio. It gives you up to 4 microphone channels. You can plug in your USB device, your cell phone. You can Bluetooth your cell phone in here if you want to record phone calls. There's 8 little pads that you can hit to have pre-programmed noises, such as, intro for your show or audience applause, laughter, rim shot, whatever you want. All you do is you plug it up to your laptop, you drag and drop the MP3 in the program, and it will automatically update it to the color and sound selection of your choice. There's a touchscreen pad where all your shows are stored. You can go through, play them from the board. It's all recorded on a micro SD card. Slip that right in your computer. You have a podcast that's been completely done all in one unit. The Rodecaster Pro is without a doubt the absolute coolest thing I've ever owned in my life. This is cooler than any cell phone, any car, any book. No offense, Kevin. This is the coolest thing I've ever owned. And go to rodemic.com right now and check this thing out, because what the people over there at Rode have done is really incredible. That's Rode, RODE.com, Rode.com. Go check them out. I'm using one of their microphones. I'm using this beautiful Rodecaster Pro. I've never seen anything like this. If you're a podcaster out there and you know all the complications that come in with trying to record a phone call, you want to do it through Skype, Skype's down, you can't really figure out how to plug it into your iPhone because the jack in your iPhone isn't the same as, the 8mm jack in your mixing board. The levels all sound weird. Everything sounds a little screwy. Then you got to go and post. You got to add your little effects in where you want to. None of that is necessary here. Absolutely none of it is necessary. The Rodecaster Pro is without a doubt a one-stop shop, all in one, everything you need for podcast production. I work for a radio station. We have a whole radio studio, and this thing can do almost everything that a multi-million-dollar radio studio can do. So go check out Rode.com. Go check out the Rodecaster Pro. It's available for purchase now. They're starting to ship worldwide. So go check them out. Shout out to all my fine folks over there at Rode Microphones. But now, with all that said and done, it's time to get into my interview with Kevin Perjerer from Defunctland. He is the author of Defunctland, Guide to the Magic Kingdom, and he joins us on the show right now.
Oh, Brad, what have you done now?
He joins me on the line right now, the author of Defunctland, the Guide to the Magic Kingdom. Kevin Perjerer joins me on the show right now. Kevin, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you doing?
I am well. I'm excited to have you on. So I read your book. Your book is awesome. If anybody out there is a fan of anything theme park related, especially Disney, I would recommend it to everybody. Defunctland, again, Guide to the Magic Kingdom. But I want to talk about everything. You've probably had a very interesting last few years with this channel, Defunctland. I stumbled across it on YouTube, like I'm sure most people have. I was actually looking up stuff about the Back to the Future ride, and it led me down a rabbit hole on YouTube, which isn't too uncommon for anybody who spends any time on YouTube. And I found your channel. Tell me about it. Where did this fascination with theme parks, start? What's the genesis of it?
Well, that's hard to go back exactly. I feel like I've been interested as long as I can remember. It's just a matter of why was I interested. I think, I grew up in the Midwest, as I mentioned in my Orient Express video on Worlds of Fun in Kansas City. And in the Midwest, there's not a lot of theme parks, and the ones that are there aren't always the most well-themed, I should say. And so it's just been one of those things I've always been interested in, but never really had the opportunity to go to as growing up. And I'd get to go to Disneyland or get to go to Walt Disney World every once in a while. Made a few vacations there with my family, but after I stepped away after we stopped doing that, I just came back to it for some reason. I think on one of the trips I got this book, and it had all these old rides that used to be at Disneyland, and it might have been Walt Disney World. And just seeing the idea that there was something there before I got there that I couldn't ride anymore, just really ignited my fear of missing out, and there's something creepy about having a ride that used to be there in like a shell of a former ride, and it's just there's some especially with animatronics, it just has this big feelings were swirling around, and I just think I never like let that go. And then I found it again after developing, 10 years later or whatever, developing video skills and developing video editing, and now having developed narration skills. It's all kind of meshed together, that interest in this niche and the video stuff, and it's just all come together. It was just the perfect mesh of those three things.
So Kansas City growing up, and you said you're on the Missouri side, right?
I was on the Kansas side.
You're on the
even
Kansas
less
side.
To do.
Okay, even less to do on the Kansas side. And when was your first trip to Disney?
I don't know. I remember it was before. It would have been in the 90s. I can't lock down a date. I don't know. We went so few times. I'm trying to think. There were a few times I can't remember. I remember distinctly riding the Matterhorn and being terrified. And I know that I chickened out on Space Mountain. I think that's what I mainly remember. And also, I talk about it in the book, but there was this time where I wanted to go ride. I think it wasn't the Astro Orbiter at the time. It was either the Star Jets or the Rocket Jets, depending on which park it was at. And it was one of those, I was with my parents, and we asked a cast member, and they said it was in Tomorrowland. And my child brain thought it meant that it's going to be open tomorrow, and we weren't going to be at the park tomorrow. We only had one day. And so I was like freaking out. And that was like my main memory of those early times at the park.
One day in Disney really isn't enough, though, right? I mean, I went to Disneyland with my girlfriend recently, like in 2016, 17, something like that. And I realized that, when you're a kid, you think that, I don't know, because I was there for 2 days or whatever when you're younger with the family or what have you, and I just remember being there for that full day. I had a Fitbit at the time. I logged like 33,000 steps. It's not enough. Not enough time for one day.
Yeah.
So I would definitely understand your dismay when you were told Tomorrowland and how that computed in your childhood brain. So were you always a Disney guy, though? Because it seems to be, you write a book about the Magic Kingdom. It seems to be Disney's more your flavor than Universal Studios.
I think personally, it's probably more my speed. I don't know. I treat it like the world's largest interactive art gallery. Because it's just so beautiful, and I think a lot of Universal and other theme parks miss out on that just because they're like the level that they greenlight projects and parts of the park are not nearly as strict as Disney. But that's my personal thing. I think more of for the channel, I don't let my personal bias come into the episodes I pick. I think it's just coincidental that my bias also happens to be the main. It's the leader of the theme park industry. Disney has always led it. They've never had any competition in what they're doing up until recently with Universal. Because if you think about the fact that Universal Studios Florida didn't open until 1990, and that's been their main theme park competition, and they've been around since 1955. They have like I don't do math, but what is that?
It's a nice lead. It's a very nice lead.
It's a good lead, 35-year head start.
Yeah.
And so they've always driven the industry, and I think that's why theme park history, we talk about it so much. And I just because like I said, there's 35 years more history to talk about. So it's no wonder why I if you look at the channel, it's like Disney, something else, Disney. Disney's probably, I try to make it about 60% of the channel because I think that's what it deserves. But it's also nice going out to these local parks, talking about the defunct local parks, talking about defunct rides at the local parks, because that brings up a whole new audience of people. And it's more socioeconomically fair because Disney is expensive. When I was growing up, we could only go a few times, and that was being from Kansas, I was fortunate. I was privileged. I got to go, and that was only a few times. But all the time I went to Worlds of Fun because it's there. It's easy. They'll give you vouchers.
Right.
You go into a sandwich shop, they'll be handing out like $30 off tickets, and so, or however much. When I was younger, it was probably way less than it is now. But it's just and then we also moved into television shows just to get to build the logistically to build the audience, but also just because I feel like everyone should be able to have their childhood formatted in a documentary style, because I think it'll interest them more in history if you take something they already know and explain like the origins to them. And so you got to expand that brand, and public television I think is the widest you can go, and then dwindle your way all the way back down to those that are fortunate enough to go to Disney parks.
Yeah, I think you're 100% right. And one of the things on your channel that actually, when I started doing a deep dive on the channel and looking up different videos, I was beyond excited and thrilled that there was an Astroworld video up there, because I'm from Houston, Texas, born and raised. I actually have an Astroworld mug in my hand right now that has greased lightning on it. But
nice.
Yeah, to have that, to be able to relive Astroworld, because I think it closed in the early 2000s, and to be able to relive it through your video, it was just awesome. What did you enjoy about Astroworld, finding out about Astroworld? Was there anything that stuck out to you as like, oh, that's really interesting? For those in Houston, we all know about Hoffines, and the Hoffines Pavilion still around. But what did you find out about Astroworld that kind of stuck out to you?
I don't. That's hard. There's so much. Because I went in fresh. I had never been to Astroworld. I never got a chance to go, and so immediately my ethos is gone. So I have to make it up with research, and that took on a couple different forms. It's interesting. I don't do a lot of full park videos because I don't feel like I can do them justice, and that's why the Astroworld video is like 25 minutes long. And because I don't ever cut out. My rule for writing is don't pay attention to time, leave everything in unless it's boring, redundant, or irrelevant. And so if any of those three, but there was so much with Astroworld that was not boring, it was not redundant, and it was definitely not irrelevant, so I just kept writing. And so I did Action Park the first season of Defunctland, and that was, that crazy water park, and
right.
That was an entire park, which not too difficult to talk about because there was only a certain amount of rides, and then you have I also did Nara Dreamland, which is also an entire park in Japan, the Disney knockoff. Also not terrible to talk about because of the rides we know about and the ones that we could translate well enough from Japanese to understand. It just wasn't as much. But Astroworld was this huge theme park. I mean, had all these different carnival rides, flat rides, roller coasters. And so when I was researching it, it was the most interesting kind of bits were how this was, well, of course, it's always interesting to figure out how it started, and it's always an oil tycoon goes to Disneyland and wants to build his own.
And oil tycoons are plenty in Texas.
Yeah, right. It's every single story. And I mean, you also have Six Flags that came from Texas, same kind of story. I don't even know if he's an oil tycoon. A rich man it was a real estate developer. Anyways, it's just a rich man goes to Disneyland, comes back and builds a theme park because he wants his own in his hometown. I think I will give the answer to the question is the outdoor air conditioning was probably the most bizarre thing that I came across, which I did not realize that is a thing or works, I guess.
Yeah, well, in Texas, that's definitely something we always have to have. Air conditioning everywhere. Yeah. It doesn't matter if it's outside, inside. We need our air condition. But, that's one of the cool things about your channel, though, and I liked your answer about looking at different people's childhoods and being able to encapsulate them in a documentary, and you do so well. How long does your typical research take, for something like an Astroworld, which is a little bit longer, but for even something like an action park? What is the normal, I guess, turnaround time for research, scripting, and then producing the video?
Well, if I sat down and did this all day and made it, if I woke up and went to bed, and had somewhat of free time during the day. If I put in if I did an 8-hour day, it probably would take me 2 or 3 days to get Astroworld done. But writing, of course, doesn't work like that. You can't pound out writing the same way you can pound out, sculpting or artwork or anything like that, because writing is something that is not. There's no manual labor involved besides typing. It's how much can your brain handle in a certain amount of time. And also, when you try to match that with research, it's taxing. I would say that, my normal turnaround time, I try to make it a week per video. But with Astroworld, it was probably 2 weeks, and I just kept writing. Sometimes you don't know, like Disney's America, that video I did, which was a theme park in Virginia that was never built, it was 35 minutes long, and that took forever. And I was like, and I do, when I research, it's not just, go to Wikipedia, follow the links at the bottom. It's like, I'm watching these 6-hour C-SPAN debates on Disney's America, or in the case of Astroworld, watching years and years of footage that was captured on 8mm cameras, and then trying to piece together timelines. So, and then usually I'll do a text-based research. I'll write the script, and then I'll do image and video. But this one I did concurrently. I remember specifically because the dates on most of the videos that people have uploaded, bless their hearts for uploading their old camcorder footage, they didn't date it. It was like Astroworld 1970s. And so then I had to, it was like a logic puzzle of, okay, there's this ride here, Grease Lightning's here, so that means it has to be past 1980, whatever. And, just piecing it together like that took a long time.
Oh man, I can only imagine some of the frustrating evenings at the Perjerer household trying to piece all that together. I'm sure that they were aplenty. I also listened to the podcast, and it was interesting. So here in Houston, I work with a guy named Booker T, who's a pro wrestler, and we do a radio show together. And you had a pro wrestler on your show. You had Zack Ryder, who I'm very familiar with, who's a WWE superstar and a big theme park enthusiast. He, along with Cody Rhodes, are big theme park guys. And you said I think you asked him something about, is there a parallel between wrestling fans and theme park enthusiasts, and what was that? And I think when I heard that, me being both, obviously working in the wrestling business and being a fan of theme parks, I try to figure it out, and I figured it out. This is exactly what the corollary is for me. It's fantastical characters and physical storytelling. I think that's what the link is for pro wrestling fans and theme park enthusiasts, especially when you think about what pro wrestling is. It's over-the-top characters, and you have this suspension of disbelief, and they're telling a story from A to B inside the squared circle with nothing but wrestling maneuvers. And when you think about theme parks, it's very much the same. You have a suspension of disbelief. There's a physical action happening when you're on a themed ride, and there are these over-the-top fantastical characters who are trying to help push that narrative and get you invested in it. Do you think I hit the nail on the head there?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm, as someone that doesn't watch a ton of wrestling, I know very little about it other than of course I watch Zach and Cody's stuff now because they interact with me on Twitter and I know them, so I'll go cheer them on and pretend like I'm knowledgeable. But that's exactly. I totally understand that now, and I've always wondered because there's so much crossover. I mean, more crossover in those two fan bases than I've seen any other with theme parks. Like, movie fans really even aren't that big a fan of theme parks, which is mind blowing because that's just another way to tell a story. But I think you hit it on the head. It's a very different way to tell a story too, because I mean, wrestling is storytelling in a lot of ways, and theme parks are storytelling in a lot of ways. But when people interact with these things casually, they might not pick up on that, and just what I mean. Yeah, no, absolutely. Now, when I read the book, there's a little beef I think that we might have. So I'm reading through the book. And my favorite ride of all time at Disney, or really any theme park of all time, is Pirates of the Caribbean. I know I'm not in the minority in that. I know that's a lot of people's favorite ride, world famous dark ride at Disneyland and Disney World, and Disney's around the world. They each have their own version, I believe, of the Pirates of the Caribbean. You say in your book that the Disney World version of the Pirates of the Caribbean, really doesn't do the ride justice at all. Now, me, I didn't go to Disneyland first. I've only been to Disneyland once, but as a child, I went to Disney World countless times. And to me, there's something special about that Pirates ride in Disney World. Tell me, why is it so inferior to its counterpart on the West Coast? Well, it's missing like 10 minutes of the ride.
Okay, yeah. Okay, aside from that.
So I talked about the story a little bit, and this isn't my story by any means. This is it's been done by the research of many other people. So hats off to all those that uncovered this throughout the years and documented this. But essentially, 1971, Walt Disney World opened, Magic Kingdom opened. You have this fan base of people, and I believe a few years earlier, oh my gosh, I don't want to give a date, in the 1960s, Disneyland Pirates of the Caribbean opened. And of course, I'm going to get all these dates wrong, and people are going to correct me in the comments. But so essentially, Pirates of the Caribbean is a huge hit at Disneyland, And in Walt Disney World, they don't have one because they had reserved the space in between Adventureland and Frontierland for this ride by Mark Davis. Yes, Mark Davis. And it was an Imagineer, and it was called the Western River Expedition. And this is actually comes up multiple times in the book because there was an exhibition for this ride that eventually never came true, and it was going to be Pirates of the Caribbean in the Old West, and you were going to ride through the same way you see pirates taking over a small town in New Orleans. You see them taking over a Western town. You see cowboys taking over a Western town, or robbers taking over a Western town, and so it's essentially the same exact format, but this big, fantastical, different telling of it. It's going to be this huge thing. They reserved all this land, blah, 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 blah. And then people open, and people being people are demanding Pirates of the Caribbean. And Walt Disney World is like, okay, fine. Management just decided, well, we'll just shelve Western River Expedition for now, and we'll just quickly build Pirates of the Caribbean as fast as we can. And what that did is they built it fast, they built it cheap, and they took out the majority. Well, they took out the entire story of the ride. And just it was like if you were to watch, I guess, I don't know why this analogy is coming up. You know, when there's like a wedding video that your friends share on Facebook,
right?
And it's like 5 minutes, and it just shows like the highlights, like them putting the cake, like all the scenes you're supposed to see, like the cake in the mouth and the first dance and the father-daughter dance and the first kiss, all that stuff. That's the version of Pirates of the Caribbean in Walt Disney World. It's all the scenes that you are expecting without any of the like actual like meat in between. So I mean, that's the explanation. It's missing like 10 minutes. The one in Disneyland's like 12, 17 minutes long.
Yeah, it's a long.
And the one in Disney World is like 5.
Yeah. Oh well, I mean, I can see that, but I think. Well, here's the thing, though. I think it's the Pirates of the Caribbean, and is it Shanghai Disney? I think there's one of them that just blows everything out of the water. When I watched the ride through, yeah, that's definitely one of the. I mean, that was incredible. Like, and it's unfair because they just built it, and they put a lot of money into it. And also, Disney. That's so weird that it's in Shanghai. I guess they're ghosts. I don't know how they got away with that. Anyways. Yeah. No, I hear you.
I guess they're zombies. I think that's the explanation, not ghosts. Because in China you can't have any ghost imagery because it's against some sort of cultural norms, and I don't want to misspeak here. But I think it's against just their culture, and so then instead of the Haunted Mansion, because that's all ghosts, I had to make Mystic Manor, which ended up being, again, the better version of the Haunted Mansion. So
they're doing something right over there. They have an effect in that Pirates of the Caribbean in Shanghai that I've watched that ride through in this particular scene I'm referring to maybe 20 times through to try to figure out how they do it. But there's a moment where, Jack Sparrow turns into a skeleton Jack Sparrow or vice versa. And I cannot figure out how they pull off that effect, but it's one of the best, achievements I've seen in a recent theme park edition. It's one of the greatest effects. Do you know what I'm referring to?
Yeah. So there's a scene where you see a skeleton, and then all of a sudden, like, the skeleton like starts to like assemble body parts, and it comes off as Captain Jack Sparrow, and he's there as an animatronic. I know how they do it if you want me to spoil it for you.
Yes, absolutely. Go for it.
It's projection mapping. And so projection mapping is the thing that Disney and Universal are really using a lot of now. It's how they do all the castle shows, both Hogwarts Castle Show, Magic Kingdom Castle Show. Whenever they have a object, like, because a projector, as we know, is supposed to play onto a flat surface, but through I don't know how exactly the technology works, but through a lot of computer and graphics, you can project onto a not flat surface. So you can project a castle show and have like each individual spire be a different projection, and this is all playing at the same time. So they did that with the Johnny Depp's character Jack Sparrow, in that they projected the skeleton on him, so it's in the dark. It's a projection you're seeing of a skeleton that's still, and then all of a sudden the projection slowly goes away and the lights slowly turn on, and that's what makes that effect happen. So the whole time what's standing there is an animatronic in the dark, and then, if I'm not mistaken, I'd have to go back and really look at this to make sure, but when I watched the ride through, the projection is what slowly disappears, and the lights come on and reveals the animatronic, when you really think it's the other way around.
Well, there you go. Now you're going to tell me Santa Claus doesn't exist, but I think it's such a great effect, though. I don't know if I'm ever going to spend any time in that part of the world, but if I do, I'm definitely going to stop at Shanghai Disney, because it just the things that they're pulling off over there, which shouldn't shock us. The things that they do in all of the Asian countries tend to outperform us when it comes to technology, so that doesn't shock me. Talk to me though about a certain person that you like to bring up a lot in the Defunctland series, especially in Disney rides, and a lot of times he's a butt of a lot of jokes. And that's Michael Eisner. Michael Eisner, of course, ran Disney for quite some time, and interestingly enough, the reason I was so fortunate to go to Disney a lot when I was a child is the telecommunications company my father worked for did business directly with Disney, and he would always, every time we'd go out there, he'd have a lunch with Michael Eisner, and he would tell me he is one of the strangest men he's ever met. He's very sure of himself, very arrogant, and very odd. Do you think that's a apropos assessment of Michael Eisner?
Michael Eisner is a complicated human being, and I'm not going to pretend to know him personally.
Right.
But based on many accounts, he's the version, and one of the reasons, and I talk about it in the book a bit, but he's the version of myself that I'm trying desperately now to become. Because he's a creative mind that was put into a business position and given too much power, and it just doesn't work. I mean, in my view, and it's because I'm a creative person myself, or consider myself such, that there are two types of people as far as creativity goes: people that are creative and people that can be creative. And people that can be creative is literally everybody. Anybody can be creative. Anybody can do something creative. But creative people are cursed to always be creative, and if they don't create, it's just taxing, and it's terrible, and it's me. That's why there's so many videos on my channel in such short time. But as a creative person, you're good at different things. Some people are storytellers, some people are artists in certain senses, some people are world builders, like George Lucas and J.K. Rowling, and then they try to become storytellers full time, and it just doesn't work. And everybody ends up hating the world that they originally built. That's a tangent. But then Michael Eisner is this great ideas guy that can go into any project and basically point out what is good, what is bad, and push it in the right direction. And that's how he got all the success. He could also recognize quality really well. So that's why he was successful at Paramount, that's why he was successful at ABC, and that's why he ended up being successful at Disney until his power went unchecked, and he was given the business side of things, because he was never a businessman. He was always a programming executive. Even at Paramount, I think that, and I'm not 100% on this, but a lot of those, like the day in, day out operations were not his responsibility. I'm pretty sure he was still hands-on in the studios. Frank Wells, on the other hand, was he was a law guy. He was a genius businessman that could work the business side of things, and Michael Eisner could, work with do programming on a larger scale. And it worked really well up until Frank's death in the mid-'90s. And from there, Michael Eisner was left basically alone to do both of those things, and it just went terribly. But yes, based on various accounts, he is apparently... I guess a bit of an arrogant person, but he's also, on other accounts, I've heard people say he's a very sincere, funny, nice guy. And I'm sure both are true. Both can easily be true. Everyone has a little bit of arrogance in them, and it just depends on who you talk to at what time, and also what era, for Eisner especially. So, I mean, I'm sure he's a nice guy. He does have $1 billion, though, so that's my personal rule. If you have over $10 million, I'm allowed to make fun of you on the internet and have no repercussions.
Absolutely. I think that's a great rule of thumb. Yeah.
have no guilt. Like, I'm not going to go off of some random commenter and just like make my entire channel about how dumb this random person is. But if you have like over $10 million and this man has $1 billion, I'm pretty sure nothing I can say is going to hurt his feelings that bad, because at the end of the day, he still has $1 billion.
Yes.
And I don't.
He does. So. He does. When you talk about being an ideas man or having different, or being a creative, I think is the term you used. When you talk about Disney's America, was it a terrible idea or an inspired idea?
Oh, that's a good question. I can't really say for certain. It was an interesting idea. It came from the wrong place. It came from a place of looking for. I mean, I don't know. It's hard to say. I think there were good ideas within the project. I think the project itself was a little bit misleading and a little bit not. I don't know. I think a lot of the ideas were really cool and like, oh, it'd be cool to have like a Civil War era battle on the river, on the big lake in the park, and then that's going to be the fireworks show. Instead of a fireworks show, you're going to have this like fireworks battle essentially. That's a great idea. That doesn't mean that the entire park should have existed. And then it's just a really hard question to answer. There's so many good ideas, and then like the whole like let's make an attraction about slavery. That was a really bad idea, and they should have never said that. Or and the problem is, I think the whole idea is bad, and it could never fly today for two reasons. One, we live in a very you call it an awakening time societally, where we're having to squash out a lot of like things that have been long held beliefs of like the majority of our society for a long time, and we're kind of having to like squash those out one by one, and it's frustrating, and that's why it's like politically correct culture. And I'm not going to get into that, but essentially we've known things for such a long time that it's hard for us to hear something different. Now, if you were to implement that into a theme park and have that run at the same time as the social awakening, or if you want to say politically correct culture, it'd be terrible, because one day the entire internet now would face Disney's America, the theme park, and just obliterate it.
Yeah,
like on the very idea of it. So that would never work. And Disney should not be taking on American history, and we should also. I don't think American history should be told necessarily as a whole through a theme park. It works kind of with Hall of Presidents, because Hall of Presidents is like, okay, we can talk about these guys, these presidents, and you can acknowledge the things they did good and acknowledge the things they did bad, and then uphold the institution of the presidency, sure. But what doesn't work is, let's tell the entire American story and try to do it in an entertaining, fun way, when the American story isn't that entertaining or fun.
Got some dark periods, got some light period. Yeah. And just even talking about it now, it's like touchy subject. Mm-hmm. And that's why it would never work. And then the second reason is that Disney is so focused on intellectual properties. They hate original things. They hate things that think the theme park industry, because of the Iger era, they think the theme park industry is a byproduct of the movies that they have, when really it's not. It shouldn't be like that. And the parks were most successful when it wasn't like that, both not monetarily, I guess. So in one way, they're right. But so Disney's America would now be Disney's Captain America. Like, you know what I mean? Like they couldn't resist. And then all of a sudden, your history theme park, even if you were to get rid of the first issue, even if you were somehow able to figure out how to do that, really take on slavery, Trail of Tears, make all of that into some fun roller coasters and do it right, which is nearly impossible. Even if you did that, they couldn't resist implementing these characters, and then it would just be another whole mess, like Captain America, like all that stuff. Yeah, I could see that making a very bad turn very quickly today. But like you said, the internet would completely obliterate just the concept. If Disney were to come out tomorrow and say, we've got this idea for Disney's America, that we had back in the whenever it was, the 80s or early 90s, whenever it was, it'd be Twitter would have a field day. It'd be a trending topic for quite some time.
Chaos.
Yeah. It actually might break the internet. It might be the finally thing that breaks the entire internet.
Yeah, that would, just because, if someone came out and said that, it would be a total PR disaster. It was a PR disaster. Like, all these things that I'm saying right now were said back then, just communication channels were a lot more closed. And so it had to be said by these prominent historians, which is kind of an oxymoron in itself. No offense to any historians listening. I guess also myself. But it's just, it was a mess. So I'm glad it didn't happen. It shouldn't have happened, but there were some good ideas within that bigger bad idea.
So let's talk about, when you talk about theming and doing it right, in your opinion, what's the best themed ride you've ever been on or ever seen?
The best themed ride, I think the best theming in any Disney park, in any park in general, it has to be Trader Sam's. Have you ever been to? I don't know when the last time you've actually been to Disney parks is. But recently they've implemented 2 bars, and I just talked to the Imagineer that made them, so I'm very biased right now. But there's 2 themed bars, and they're called Trader Sam's. They're tiki bars, but they're really, really well themed tiki bars, and there are stories told throughout the walls of the bar. And there's all of these. Every drink has a. Every time you order a specialty drink, there's something that happens. So if you order the Krakatoa, there's a volcano in the back that erupts through a window, a fake window. That actually looks good. And, it's just this really well themed. On the walls, there's all these notes to Trader Sam, the man that owns the bar. It's just like all these, it's just super detailed theming. And that's a heavy storytelling, but not heavy-handed storytelling. Heavy-handed storytelling, so like that, that's an example of like, there's a lot there subtly told. And then there's also an example of like Haunted Mansion, which I think is also probably the most well-themed ride out there, which is heavy-handed storytelling, and that's like, it's clear story. There's something going on right in front of you, but there's also a lot of subtleties in the back. And so it's just so well, the props in that, it's just so well fleshed out. And I can think of 1,000 other examples of really well-themed rides, but also Indiana Jones Adventure at Disneyland. And you could probably say
the queue in that ride is phenomenal.
Yeah, it's like 0.75 miles, I think.
Yeah,
to get from one to the end. And so it's an incredible ride. And I think Universal's getting there. I think Harry Potter and the Escape from Gringotts is a really well themed ride. I don't consider screens to be a replacement. I mean, there are a lot of practical things going on that ride, but most of it is screens. And it's just stuff like that that Universal still needs to catch up on. And then Cedar Fair and Six Flags don't even care, so that's fine. They don't even pretend to care. And so, yeah, I think Haunted Mansion or Trader Sam's are going to be my example, or Indiana Jones Adventure. I'm just going to keep going, so please stop me.
Okay, no, I got you. Okay, a couple more things before I get you out of here. I'm going to give you some quick questions right here. What's the most overrated Disney attraction?
Oof. Overrated's hard to say. I would say... Man, that's a good question.
I know you're choosing your words very carefully.
Peter Pan's Flight. Duh. Oh. Sorry, I didn't even need to think.
All right, there we go.
Peter Pan's Flight is the most overrated piece of crap. I don't like it. It is... If it wasn't so overrated, I wouldn't hate it so much. But because it's an original ride, it should still exist at Disneyland. But why is it Walt Disney World? I have no idea. It's like it takes an hour to get on it, and it's a 2.5 minute ride. And the only cool thing about it is that you're swinging, and it doesn't swing you that much. The animatronics don't move more than their heads turning. It is crap, and it does not deserve to exist. But that is the most overrated, 100%. I don't know why people say that. I'm so confused.
Guiltiest pleasure at a theme park?
Oh my, that's a better question. Oh my gosh, I'm going to go with Disney. Well, Butterbeer at Universal. Guilty pleasures in what sense?
Just something that's like, man, I got to do it when I'm here, even though I know it's silly, but I got to do it.
Oh my gosh, what is it? Well, because of the book, one of my answers is going to the train station in Magic Kingdom and looking at all the old wind up of those old movie players from the arcade that they moved.
Okay, I'll take that.
That's a lot of fun.
I'll take that.
And yes, so then I'm trying to. What else?
For me, it's Small World. That's a guilty pleasure for me. I feel like I have to go on Small World. It just seems to be a tradition. Even though I'm kind of bored by the attraction, I just have to do it.
That's not a pleasure then. You don't enjoy it.
Well, it's a pleasure. It's like, well, okay, yeah, that's actually correct. Well, then I don't know. Then I don't know the answer to my own question either.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't love It's a Small World either. I mean, the one in Disneyland is so long.
Yes.
I didn't realize how long it was. It's a long time. So I don't know.
It is just turn after turn. There is more of it. Dumbest idea for a theme park ride?
That's difficult. One that actually came to fruition?
Yes. For me, it'd be whatever that ride was that had Drew Carey on it. That's probably the dumbest one for me.
Yeah, the Superstar Limo, I was going to say that, but then I thought it's not a dumb idea in itself. It's just the execution. That Superstar Limo is definitely the worst ride to come out. A Fast and Furious at Universal Studios, that's the dumbest ride. Or no, wait, sorry, no. Changing my answer to Jimmy Fallon.
Oh, you
Universal.
know. Now, I've heard great things about it, though. I've heard that it's very fun.
It's so dumb.
I've never been to Universal, so I don't know, but I plan on trying. It is kind of a silly idea. You know, it's what race through New York or something like that. What's the best boat ride?
Oh, well, Splash Mountain's technically a flume, so I can't count that.
Oh, well, I think that would count, right? Would that not count?
Okay.
I'll count that one.
What? Okay, well then Splash Mountain for sure.
Okay. What's the ride you've been most terrified of?
Space Mountain, 100%.
Space Mountain.
Space Mountain is a terrifying ride. It is. I'm so afraid my hands are going to get chopped off every time. And I wouldn't be so afraid. It's just everybody. The one in Walt Disney World is the one I'm talking about, by the way. That's the oldest steel coaster in Florida. In Florida, the land of theme parks, that's the oldest one. And it's just terrifying. It came out in 1974, 75, and it's terrifying. And everybody just thinks it's safe because they've rode it so many times. I mean, of course it's safe, but it's safe until it's not. And they need to replace that track ASAP.
You know, it's funny. Here's another wrestling theme park corollary. Ric Flair, one of the greatest wrestlers of all time, often refers to himself as Space Mountain. So there you go. That's just a little nugget for you.
Oh, well, yeah, see? Now I'm even more scared.
There you go.
I would not do well in a wrestling match.
Now, when I talk about rides I'm most terrified of, so I was one of the privileged few when I was a child at that to have my mind completely damaged forevermore by riding the extraterrestrial alien escape or alien encounter.
Mm-hmm.
Very frightening ride. That was probably honestly, and I'm not even joking with you, Kevin, probably the most terrified I've ever been in my life as a child, without a doubt, was that ride. It was so real, especially when you're 7. It was so real and so scary. I actually remember a lady, like she was probably in her 40s or 50s. She had to sit down like on the ground after the ride and catch her breath, and she was like gripping her chest. What a horrendously scary ride.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was a scare. It was just so. I can't believe it ever existed. I'm upset that it no longer is there. And even though Stitch's Great Escape is now supposedly closed forever, I guess it is closed forever. It's just, I don't know. Yeah, it is. It's a scary ride.
So let me ask you this: why did you? And this would be my final question for you. Why did you feel, after the success of the YouTube series, why? Because you even said in the first couple pages of the book, I didn't think I'd ever be writing a book. I don't even really know why I am writing a book. Something to that effect. Why did you write the book? Why did you feel like it was necessary?
Well, nothing I do is necessary.
I like that answer.
None of this information is going to save any lives. But I don't know. It was just one of those things someone mentioned, you should have a coffee table book. Mm-hmm. And I was like, well, I can't do that because a coffee table book is typically a book with, large pictures and little text because I don't own pictures. And so I couldn't justify fair use on Disney's content. And I try to always fall under fair use, even when others on the internet, kind of toe the line as far as Disney books go. But I was like, if I'm going to use Disney imagery, I really have to make it my own content about Disney so I can claim fair use. And so I was like, okay, well, I could write a book. And then I was like, I'd love to write a fake field guide because there's a lot of those out there. Most famous being Len Testa's the unofficial guide to Walt Disney World. Sold like 1 billion copies. And everybody kind of knows that these, you get the book before you go and you read through it and you learn some tips and tricks, where to eat, where not to go on what days, whatever, what have you. And I was like, well, there's a lot of material there that I think is ripe for parody. And then I just went on with that, and then I, kind of made it a story because I just can't help myself because, like I said, I'm a storyteller, for better or for worse. And it's just one of those things. I don't know. It just started happening. I started it a week ago, so 53 weeks ago, because it was coming home from, I traveled to my family Thanksgiving, And on the way home, someone gave me the idea at my family Thanksgiving, and then I went home. And then on the plane ride, plane ride back to Florida, I started writing it. So, and I started writing the next one. Probably, I don't know if I'll ever finish it. It's you heard it here first. It is about Epcot, but we'll see. I got to get more reactions to this book to see if it's worth doing.
What has the reaction been to this? Because I would love to see a sequel to it, but have you gotten positive feedback?
Yeah, it's all been positive. It's mainly just the passion of the book itself. The book needs to build a fan base before I can really greenlight myself a second one. And what I mean by that, it's not necessarily that like, oh, this isn't, I'm not looking for this to become the biggest thing ever, but I need people to ask for the sequel. I need people to like want the sequel because the people are asking me every day for more videos. And so it's just, where do I put my time? And I did that at the same time as I was doing videos, and it just depends on what I'm doing in my personal life and what I have time for. And I've tried to, summer is always easier for me to get things done than it is during like the holiday season, like it is right now. And then January, February, March just aren't, it's not worth doing anything on YouTube really because of ad revenue, but that's a whole nother story. So it's like, I suddenly have a year-round business schedule, which is not something I would ever have for myself, but like every month is dictated by something. So it's like, don't do anything October, November, December on the book, because that's when you need to be putting out videos, but don't put any videos out January anyway. So that's a long tangent on my weird business schedule, but yeah, it's just a matter of at the right time, I'll write it and see where it goes. I have some ideas for the storyline of that one. Because I kind of broke into fantasy a bit towards the end of the first book. I think this next one is going to be a lot more heavier on that.
Well, you know what? I would love to see the sequel to it, and I'm excited to see what comes next for Defunctland. I mean, what do you see? What do you see? Do you see this becoming just something much larger than you? I mean, it already probably has become much larger than you initially anticipated, but I remember there were talks about a VR theme park. What's next for Defunctland as Kevin Perjerer sees it?
Defunctland, the show, is different than Defunctland, the channel, in that Defunctland, the show, will not go on forever. I don't want that to happen. I think it's this beautiful little thing that I've created by circumstance and hard work and a little bit of luck and all those wonderful things. It's built a show that everybody really seems to like, and all my favorite things have ended too late. Like, I love the TV show Community. It ended way too late. I love the TV show Arrested Development. It's still going on. It's getting worse. I love all these Scrubs, all these things. All my favorite shows have eventually, dipped and gotten worse. And I don't want that to happen to Defunctland. Or at the very least, I'm going to take a break and then reboot it. But on the channel itself, I want to keep making mini documentaries. I want to make mini documentaries a profitable option for content creators. And between me, Brightson Films, and some other YouTube channels, I think we're really doing this. And I think that's where I'm going. I have ideas for miniseries that are not necessarily on theme parks, like we do Defunct TV right now, which is an example. But I have some other miniseries that are kind of weird, but they all kind of tie around the same thing, which is it's always the story of, I think, the most fascinating story for myself personally, and I'm not even going to pretend like everyone is fascinated by this, but it's always the story of the wholly creative person versus the wholly business person. And holy isn't like fully, not like Jesus holy. It's like someone that's completely creative butts heads with someone completely business, because that is the lowest and both the lowest stakes and highest stakes thing. So it's not like, we're not talking about like death and, genocide and horrible things that have happened in history, but history a lot of times has been the difference between that artist and then that businessman. And so if you can combine the capitalism, which always breeds good storytelling, and you can breed with someone that's creative, which is what drives my interest. Those two things have a lot of things, and I'm trying to find other subjects that have that, and there are a lot, and I'm trying to narrow them down now. So theme parks are a good example. TV shows are a good example. Movies are a good example, but they're hard to tell in a series because it's more of a series of isolated incidents. But I have some other examples. I don't want to give anything away, but I have some ideas. So a lot more coming in the realm. I'm hoping my audience is going to stick with me and let me convince them that this is basically the same thing. It's just not the same thing to the point that it'll be boring.
Well, I'll tell you what, I've enjoyed a lot of the content you put out on the channel, even the defunct TV stuff. I enjoyed the Legends of the Hidden Temple, which was a childhood favorite of mine. And you can get the book, Defunctland, Guide to the Magic Kingdom by Kevin Perjerer on defunctland.com. Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel to see all the series coming out from the creative mind of Mr. Kevin Perjerer. Kevin, I appreciate you coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. This has been a lot of fun.